Welcome to another episode of the PS We Expire podcast. I am your host, Morgan Motzinger, and today we are talking about time. We're talking specifically about time management, the tool that has made a massive improvement in my life, and also why time management even matters. Why do we want to be intentional about how we spend our time? So that's what we're talking about today on the PS We Expire podcast. Thanks for joining me. I have purchased so many tools over the years to help me with time management. I have bought the planners, I have gotten the apps, I have tried all the different systems, and it wasn't until I discovered this one method that things really changed for me. Now, I want to talk first about why time management even matters. Like, who cares? Who cares how you spend your time as long as you're getting stuff done, as long as you're making progress on your to-do list, as long as you are making time for activities that you want to do. So first, I want to talk about the why, the big why. Time management is part of a larger conversation about how we want to live our lives. And then I also want to share with you the practical how to use this method to see if it works for you, to see if it helps you feel better about the way that you're spending your time. Now, before I get into any of that, I know some of you will not watch this entire video or listen to this entire episode, so I want to give you one massive takeaway right now. Just in case you're not going to watch or listen to the rest of this, I want you to have this one tip that you can start to implement right away. The biggest, most important piece of this time management method is that you put a time and a date to the tasks on your to-do list. That's it. And you think maybe this is such a simple, what, that doesn't even make sense, like why that would be a big deal. But I guarantee you, if you do this for like a week, or even do this with the things that are currently on your to-do list, you will see a massive shift in your mentality and in the stress and anxiety reduction of the things that you have to do. So just try that. Open up your to-do list, pull out your notebook or your sticky note or your whiteboard or wherever you have your to-do list written down. And I want you to not only write the date that you're going to do it, but also the time that you're going to do it and how long it's going to take you. And then stick to that. Okay, so that's your big takeaway. If you get nothing else out of this episode, please try implementing that and just test it out. Just do a little experiment and see how that goes. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about why time management even matters. And what do I even mean by time management? Time management is important because of two very, very big things. Number one is that we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We don't know what's going to happen with our families. We don't know what's going to happen with our loved ones. We don't know what life is going to look like for us tomorrow. And so time management as part of the bigger picture is really about being intentional about the ways that you are directing your time and your energy and your focus. So I think so many people get to a place in their life where they're like, where did the last 5 years go? Where did the last 10 years go? How did I get here? And I think the majority of people who have that kind of rude awakening of like seeing how quickly time is flying by, it's because they haven't been intentional about the things that they have invested their time and energy in. If you have children, you know that this is true because one day you wake up and they're a teenager. You like go through those sleepless nights when they're little. And then next thing you know, they're in junior high school, learning to drive a car and off to college. And you're wondering, where did that time go? So the biggest lesson or the biggest kind of takeaway from all of this is, how do we be intentional with the time that we have so that we don't get to the point where we're like, number one, I haven't made progress on any of my goals. And number two, like how did this go by so quickly? How did this go by so quickly? So time management is about being intentional about how you're spending your time. And then the second part of that, so number one, we don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. And then the second part of that is that time is, I'm sure that you've experienced this, that time sometimes doesn't make any sense. Like when you're in the flow of things, when you're immersed in a creative project or you are very present with somebody else, you're in a conversation with a really good friend, time just goes by so differently than it does outside of that intentional, focused, kind of creative flow. So we want to understand how to introduce more of that creative flow into our lives to not only be very present with the people that we're with, but also to make good progress on the things that are important to us, whether that's in our business, in our creative endeavors, in our hobbies, etc. So time management on a bigger scale is really understanding that we have a limited amount of energy and we have a limited amount of time. And so we want to be very purposeful in the way that we spend that time and energy. I remember when I was thinking about this like time management kind of thing and being frustrated by like why I wasn't making progress on my goals, or like why I was procrastinating on things that were important to me, or wondering like, how do I deal with this like kind of like energy in me that I don't know where to direct it, and just spending so much time on things that I didn't really care about. Like I was spending time watching shows on Netflix that I was like, did that make me feel any better or give me any like great insight into how to live my life the way that I want to? Or was I just numbing out to the things that were happening in my life? Or even pulling up, on my iPhone, pulling up the time spent app. What is that called on here? It's called, let me pull it up right now because I'm so curious. I'm not going to tell you how much time I'm spending on things, but it's the screen time. So you can absolutely get apps for this. You can turn it on your iPhone, and I'm certain that there are time tracking apps on your phone, on your Android phone, so that you can see how much time you're spending doing particular things. So I went into my screen time and was looking at how much time I was spending on social media. Ugh. So let's just assume for argument's sake that we spend, I don't know, 3 hours a day on either social media apps or, what other kind of apps just happen to like suck up our attention, whether it's a game app or on websites that you like to peruse. But it's the time that we're not being super intentional about, that we're just using as either an escape or entertainment, or using it to fill the gaps when we're waiting for something else. So let's assume that on average, we're awake for like 15 hours a day. Okay, so I'm not going to include the time that we're sleeping because it's not helpful for this exercise. But let's assume a 15-hour day. If we spend 3 of those hours engaged in activities that we're not purposeful about, like let's say it's scrolling on social media. Okay, so 3 hours in a 15-hour day, 3 hours of that. So what that means is we're going to do 365 times 3 hours divided by 15 hours, since we're doing 15-hour days to see. That comes out to 73 days a year, 73 waking days a year. So over like 2.5 months of your waking time is spent on activities that maybe you don't even really feel any better when you're on those or engaged in those activities, or you feel like, this was my wake up call, was like, what could I create in my life? How could I move myself forward to be the person that I want to be, to have the life that I want to have, if I had an additional 73 days to do that in? 73 days of like 15 hours of waking time. What kinds of things could I create in my life? What kinds of ways could I connect with the people in my life the way that I want to, with 2.5 months a year? This absolutely blows my mind. This blows my mind. And it's so helpful for me to even talk about this again in the podcast, because this method that I'm going to teach you, I have used previously and have had so much relief from stress and felt so connected to my purpose when I've used this method, that it's good for me to talk about it again, because I go through spurts where I don't use this, and then I get frustrated at the amount of time that I'm just kind of spinning my wheels or doing things that aren't really that important. So first, I want to talk about life goals. Okay, we've talked about a little bit about the why. Why do we want to do this? I don't want to get to the end of my life and be like, well, damn, I just spent so much of my life on mindless, meaningless things. I want to be intentional about how I spend my time. So that's the big why. The first step in understanding how we want to spend our time is getting really clear on what our life goals are. I think people are hesitant to create life goals, number one, because we're afraid of failure. And number two is because we don't really know what we want to do next. And that is totally okay. It's totally okay that you don't know what you want to do next. So I would encourage you to set goals, not with the intention of sticking to them no matter what, but because they give you a direction to start moving. What I have found for myself is that when I set goals for myself and I start moving in that direction, then I start to uncover more and more information about what I want to pursue next. So the end goal may change, but you can't really change direction if you're not moving. It's like if you're trying to steer a car, it's so difficult to turn that wheel if you're in park, right? So if you start moving forward, you're able to steer a little bit easier and course correct and change directions, etc. So this is setting life goals is really about creating some momentum in your life towards things that you are choosing on purpose. So some of your life goals may be around what you want to do in retirement. They may be around a business that you want to start, education that you want to pursue, how you want to show up in your relationships. So life goals, a great way to determine what some of your life goals are is to create a mind map. So a mind map, I mean, you can Google this and find this really easily, but basically a mind map is a great way to brainstorm how things in your life are connected and how to categorize things appropriately. So in the center, you would have yourself. And then off of that, you would, draw little arrows to other little bubbles that are things like relationships, finances, health, maybe work. Okay. And then from there, you can draw little lines and bubbles off of that where you are starting to see what relationships in my life are important to me. So from relationships, maybe you have a partner or a spouse, you have children, you have your parents, you have your friends, you have your community. And then you're able to really start to craft from there a bigger picture, a more clear picture of what you want your life to look like. You can start to become very, very clear about the things that are most important to you and start to actually divvy up your time appropriately. One of the great things about doing this too is that not only do you get clear on the things that you want to do, but you start to gain clarity around the things that you don't want to do anymore. When you see how much time or how little time you actually have, you start to become more stingy with your time and you start to spend it on the things that really matter to you. So time management is not just about saying yes to the right things, but it's also about saying no to the wrong things. So when we're creating our life goals, a mind map is a fantastic tool to do this. And then I want you to ask yourself some simple questions. Okay, here's 3 simple questions that you can ask yourself to help tune in to what some of your life goals would be. Number 1 question is, if I knew that I couldn't fail, what would I do? What would I try? What would I pursue? If I knew that I would not fail, what would I try? If money was not an object, what would I do? If money was no object, what things would I pursue? What activities would I do? What places would I want to go? And what I want you to do is I want you to just let your brain come up with whatever it comes up with. So don't do like the justification thing and be like, well, I can't afford that. That's too expensive. Or don't let your brain do that. Right now, all you're doing is just listening to what comes up and writing it down. So what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? If money was not an object, what would I pursue? And finally, if you could decide right now what life would look like in 10 years, what would it look like? How much time would you have to pursue your hobbies? What type of work would you be doing? How old would your kids be in 10 years? Okay, so what this exercise is doing is just giving you some clarity again on what are the most important things in your life. What things have you maybe deep down wanted to pursue that you have not created space in your life to do? And why aren't you doing that? A lot of time management is really about emotional management, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But these are just some good exercises to really start to hone in on what you want your life to look like. This next idea is not, I did not come up with this, but it's the big rocks and little rocks concept of time management and energetic motion management. So if you have a jar and you have a pile of big rocks and you have a pile of little rocks, if the big rocks are the things that are most important in your life, your relationships, your activities, things in your business, the most important things, the biggest things in your life, and the small rocks are kind of like the minutia, the things that are not that important, but kind of take up a lot of time that you have to give a lot of energy and time to. If you dump all of the small rocks into that jar first, and then you go to put the big rocks in, you're not going to be able to fit the big rocks in. There's going to be big rocks that are left out. If you put the big rocks in first, then you can dump all the small rocks around it and it settles around that. What this means is that if you schedule into your time the things that are most important to you first, then you can make sure that those things get done. So if one of your big rocks is exercise, if you say, I'm prioritizing my physical health and exercise is a part of that, then that's one of your big rocks, and you put it onto your calendar first, this means that you will get that done. You will not be doing all of the minutia, all of the things that really are not as important are not ever going to take the place of that thing that is most important to you. So clarifying what your big rocks are, clarifying what things are most important to you and what things are most important for your life goals, you're going to put those things on your schedule first, and then you're going to work everything else around that. So as I move into what this method actually is, it's really important to gain clarity on those things first. Because if we're just popping things in our calendar that are not really going to contribute to creating the life that we really want to have, we're going to be in the same place, 10 years down the road wondering, how the heck did I spend my time? Why am I not where I want to be? Because even though we've taken it a step further from not being aware of that at all, if we're only ever scheduling the things that are not most important to us, we're still going to have a reduction in our life satisfaction. So this method of putting a time and a date to the tasks on your to-do list, the reason why this works, one of the reasons why this works is because our brains are not meant to be storage containers. They're processing units. I mean, that sounds like, computer verbiage, but think about it like this. When you have so many on your computer, if you have so many apps and programs on your computer, and you have like a billion files saved, or like me, if you have so many photos saved on there, what starts to happen? You start to try and run these programs and they're so slow. They're so bogged down because there's not enough room on there to actually run the programs. So a lot of times, we'll get we have the cloud now, or like Dropbox. So it's storing it off of your computer. It's storing it somewhere else so that your computer is freed up to run the programs. In the same way, if we have our tasks, if we have our things that we have to do stored in our brains, it gums up the process and it makes it more difficult for us to think clearly, act decisively, and make decisions really well. It makes it much more difficult also to manage our overwhelm, our anxiety, our stress, because the system is all bogged down with the things that we have to do. So what we're doing is we're moving all of the files or the to-dos out of our minds, out of our thinking minds, and putting them somewhere else, which means that we get freed up to think about other things. This was the most astounding result that happened for me when I started doing this. I remember the first week that I did this, where I started to put everything on my to-do list in my calendar. I was playing a game with my children, and I had one of my to-do lists pop into my head, as it does. I'm sure that you know what I'm talking about. Like, you can be in the middle of something completely unrelated and your brain's like, hey, don't forget you have this you have to do this thing that's on your to-do list. I was playing a game with my kids, and this popped into my head, this thing that was on my to-do list, and I was able to remind myself that I don't have to think about that right now, because it's on my calendar for Tuesday at 2:00. So I was able to really quickly shift back into being very present with my children playing a game because I knew I wasn't going to forget that because it was stored in my calendar. It wasn't stored on my to-do list. It was stored on my calendar. If you write things down on a to-do list and you think, well, that's fine, it's like not in my brain anymore, it still is, because the thing that tethers it out of your mind, the thing that tethers it elsewhere is time, is putting a time to it. This is, I want you guys to try this and then send me a message and let me know if you have this experience where it frees up so much mental energy. You don't have to keep track of those things anymore. It's unbelievably liberating. Okay, so first of all, why does our to-do list actually never end? Why is that? Well, it's because things come up all the time that need attention, or you remember things that you weren't thinking about before when you're, creating your to-do list, or you have work things come up or whatever. So our to-do list just keeps going and going and going and going. And that is a very defeating thing for me, because I will end my day and feel like I didn't get anything accomplished because the to-do list didn't really ever get any smaller. I would cross something off and something else would come up and I need to add it to the list. So the way of putting the times to your tasks is that you are going to understand that you are making progress on these things. Your brain, when you do this, when you put things on your to-do list, your brain is going to find all sorts of reasons for you to not do them. I don't have time to do that right now, or oh man, I forgot to do this, or like if it's a to-do task that's outside of your house, or it's outside of your work hours or whatever, your brain is always going to find reasons for you to not do it. So it's going to stay on your to-do list forever. When you start to put things on your calendar, you're also able to group them with other like things. Okay, I'll talk about that in a minute when I talk about the actual way to do this method. But your brain is going to continue to offer you reasons why you shouldn't do those things if they're on your to-do list and they're not on your calendar. So our to-do lists are great, but this is a way to, again, to like actually make some progress, some progress that you can see towards the things that you want to do. Okay, so here's the actual method. I had this idea of calling this method lose your shit because I felt so much before I started doing this. I felt so much like if there's one more thing I have to do, I am going to lose my shit. If there's one more thing that I have to think about, if there's one more thing that is added to my to-do list on top of everything else, I feel like I am going to lose my shit. So this is a way to, instead of losing your shit, it's to lose your shit, as in lose the things that are not really very important to you, that are not going to contribute to your happiness or your life satisfaction or your joy or your connection with others. We're going to lose all the shit that is not that important and get really focused. Okay, so the two options are, you can either continue to live in a state of overwhelm, stress, feeling like you're not making progress on your goals, personal or professional goals, or you can start saying no to the things that don't actually contribute to the life that you want to live. So here's the method. Here's the lose your shit method, okay? One day a week. I typically will do this on Sunday. Some people do this on Monday. I want you to block out an hour, maybe 2 hours when you're first starting out so that you get the hang of this, but block out an hour, just 1 hour, where you are going to, number one, you're going to write down everything that you have to do that week. Everything that's on your to-do list, you're going to write it down. This is going to be a good chunk of the time because you need to allow yourself the brain space to let things come to your awareness that you maybe have ignored for a long time, or you just need to give yourself time and space to let these ideas come in and and remember the things that you have on your mind that you want to do. So these are things that even are, maybe project specific in your business, or in your personal life, things like grocery shopping, or, I need to mail that package back. I need to get that return sent back to Amazon. I need to schedule my kid's doctor appointment. I need to take him to their doctor appointment. Everything. I want you to write everything down. I just do it on, a regular piece of paper, and I just do a brain dump. Just dump everything out of my brain, everything that I have to do. I typically will have a to-do list in my notes app on my phone. I also use the app Todoist, which is really, really helpful. But I'll compile all of my to-do lists onto this piece of paper. And then I will open up my Google Calendar and I'll start to schedule things. I was so resistant to using an electronic calendar for so long. I had my physical hard copy planner, and then I had my whiteboard calendar at home, and I had my calendar for work. And what I ended up having to do was, like, I had to go to like 4 different places to make sure that everything was copacetic, make sure that I didn't miss any. If I was looking at this calendar, I knew that this still needed to be on there for my other calendar. It just got too crazy. So I started using Google Calendar, and I love it so much because, like with any calendar app, you can go in and you can, color code it, and you can share it across multiple email addresses. You can share it with other people if you want to. You can add people to these tasks. It was a relief once I got past that initial resistance to using the technology to do this. So I will go into my Google Calendar and I will put every single thing on my to-do list into my calendar. What I love about this is that you can start to group things together. So I will have, if I have on my list, I need to do a return. I got to drop it off at the post office or UPS. I need to go grocery shopping. I need to, drop off this thing at this other store or whatever. I will group all of those things together so that I am really utilizing my time the best way possible. Because I hate that when I go out and I do an errand, and then I come home, and then I later that day have to go out and do another errand. It's like, it just is not a great use of my time. So when you get them all written down and you can start to see things that will work together, then you start to really utilize your time really, really well. If I have things on my list that are all like research related, or I need to, send some emails to people, I can group all of those things together also. It's like such a relief to know that I'm not spending a lot of time getting to where I need to be in order to do those tasks, whether that's physically or digitally. Just such a good use of time. So not only are you going to put it on your calendar for what day you're going to do it, you're also going to put what time you're going to do it and how long it's going to take you. What I love so much about this is that it doesn't leave it open-ended. Like, it forces you to push past that bullshit that you have in your brain about things needing to be perfect. This is so helpful when it comes to things related to your business, because if you're doing, if you're a business owner and you're doing any kind of like content creation, or any kind of like collateral in your business, or you're sending emails to people or whatever, this really just helps you stop pursuing perfection and start pursuing just getting things done. And I'm not an advocate for sloppy work, not by any stretch of the imagination, because I'm still the one who gets to decide how long something is going to take me. But really what it does is it just makes me push past all of that emotional resistance to doing something, and reminds me that because I have enough experience doing XYZ task, I know typically how quickly I can get it done. If you want to take this a step further and do a little bit of experimentation for yourself, you can start timing yourself when you do certain tasks. This is really fun. I've noticed this when I go work out, how much of my time at the gym am I actually doing movements, and how much am I resting, and how much am I talking to I don't really talk to other people. I'm kind of I like put my head down and get it done when I go to the gym. But how much time am I actually using on things that aren't specific to that task? So if you start to time yourself, just pay attention to how long things are taking you when you're really focused and actually doing them. That'll give you an idea of how much time you should allocate for those tasks. But really, even just this, like I am deciding that this task is going to take me 15 minutes, and seeing when things are on your schedule, it doesn't allow for you to procrastinate in the same way based on just feeling like I don't want to do it. So much of why this works, and not only why it works for your time management, but why this is going to increase your confidence, increase your productivity, and help you help develop self-trust, is because you will be keeping commitments to yourself all the time. When you are focused on a task and you know, I have 15 minutes to do this, you're not going to be scrolling on Instagram, or you're not going to be, puttering around the house and not doing the thing that you said you were going to do, because you know that you have intentionally thought about the task that you're going to do. It releases so much of that resistance to doing a task because you've decided ahead of time how you're going to spend that time. It is phenomenally helpful. It's so helpful to do this. Okay, so on scheduling day, you're doing a brain dump, and then you're putting absolutely everything on your to-do list. And then the last piece of this is just that stick-to-itiveness part of it. And I just said that you are creating self-trust. You are creating more confidence for yourself because you understand that you can count on yourself. I think that is one of the most damaging and difficult things about not having any kind of like a time management mindset or an intentional mindset, is that we feel like we can't rely on ourselves. It's like if you have an eating plan, or maybe not even an eating plan, but like a way that you have decided to stick to nutrition in a way that makes your body feel good, that if we consistently do things that go against that, then what kind of trust are we building up for ourselves? If we had a friend who we make plans with and consistently cancels, or consistently is late, or consistently shows up with the wrong things, or when we're with them, they're always mentally involved in some other task, that relationship breaks down. We start to know that we can't rely on them or can't count on them. And the same thing happens if we do that with ourselves. If we are consistently not doing the things that we say we're going to do for ourselves, if we are not able to really give ourselves the attention that we need, if we're not taking care of ourselves in a way that really contributes to our overall well-being, think about how damaging that is to our relationship with ourselves. So this time management method works really well for me. It may not work for you, and that's totally fine. More than anything, I am a huge advocate for autonomy, meaning you have to find the things that work for you. And what works for me may not work for you. What works for somebody else may not work for you. You have to experiment and find the thing that works for you. But my challenge, my takeaway from all of this is that you put in the effort and the intention to actually find those things that work for you. Conduct little experiments for yourself all the time. Try and figure out what things contribute the most to your mental, emotional, spiritual well-being, and then do those things. So in this larger conversation around time management, this really is about understanding that we have a finite amount of time. We don't know how long we get on this planet. We don't know how long we get with the people that we love in our lives. And for me, I don't want to waste it. I don't want to squander that. And this doesn't mean that I don't ever watch movies or scroll on Instagram or, spend time doing things that I find entertaining. It's not about cutting those things out of your life completely. It's about being really purposeful with them and really being in tune with ourselves about how those activities actually make us feel. It's about understanding that when I get to the end of my life, I don't want to be full of regret. I want to know that Not that every second of my life was planned and managed and stuck to no matter what, but that I made the most of the moments and that I was purposeful about choosing how to spend my time. And I want to choose to spend my time on the things that are most important to me. But if I don't ever really get clarity on what those things are, then again, it's directionless. So getting really clear on the things that are important to you, the things that contribute the most to your happiness and your connection, and actively, intentionally planning those things, putting those things on your calendar so that even some of like the big dreams that you have, that you feel like you can make progress towards those and that they're not so big you're never going to accomplish them, but you're breaking it down into like little bite-sized pieces and actually putting those things in your calendar. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope that this is helpful. I hope this is helpful to you. If you want to try out this method, I'm going to give you a recap really quick because I know that I gave you a lot of information on those, but here are the basic steps. Schedule 1 day a week at the beginning of your week to plan your entire week. So you will set aside an hour or two, preferably on Sunday or Monday. Write down everything on your to-do list and then put every single one of those things in your calendar with time and date and how long you're going to spend doing it. Group things together that are similar, that take the same kind of focus and energy, and schedule your big rocks first. So put things on the calendar first that are most important to you. Things like spending time with your family, things like having to do with self-care. So exercise, if you really find a lot of joy and pleasure in, going to a movie or getting a massage or, whatever happens to be dinner with friends, put those things on your calendar first and then fill in around that all of the minutia and the things that maybe that have to get done, but aren't the most important things to you. So thank you so much for listening to this episode of the PS We Expire podcast. I hope this is helpful as you continue to create meaningful connection with others and with yourself in your life. Before we go, PS.